Hey you! Stop right there! You think you're going into a theater for this presentation? No. I am taking you to the 16th century Italian street market. That's right. My name is Natalie, and welcome to my presentation of Commedia dell'arte. So a few fun facts is that in Italy, there were two types of commedia that were being really recognized. The first was academic, and the other was professional, or dell'arte. Now, if you see these people here with the half mask, they're for a reason. So, Commedia dell'arte really came about as a way to bring about comedy to the people. Troupes would actually walk around and go to different places as a troupe and would perform in public. Now, what is the best way to grab someone's attention fast when they're just going about their normal day? These archetypes and half masks like this were used as a way to bring people in and to really start the story going really quick. And it was really effective. So in the beginning, females were not as included, but at the mid-1560s, they started to be included more and more in medieval performances. Of course, this increased the popularity of the form, and it spread rapidly across Europe, reaching places like Stockholm and Moscow. So how many people would be in a troupe? It was about 8 to 12 people, each with their own archetype or specialized character. Now, here we have a couple of different archetypes. The one right here in the red was a Pantalone. Pantalone was an old, rich Venetian, grumpy, wise, and prudent, and he often falls in love with women much younger than himself. So it makes for a predictable scene. He's often seen wearing red and like trousers with like a black or red hat and black sleeveless coat. So you can tell right away, including like the way that he stands, what he basically stands for. The Colombina, seen right over here, was one of the most popular female characters, and her name comes from Colomba, or dove. So she's supposed to be a young woman, innocent and naive, and so she does a lot of like that very lightness, lively. So she usually represents the servant who is lying to protect her young mistress. And she is usually engaged or married to the Arlecchino. Okay, so the Arlecchino, or the Harlequin, is certainly the most popular and most beloved, like biggest staple of this Italian era and Commedia dell'arte. He is a servant, so he, him pronouns, and is supposed to be funny and is typically wearing multicolored patchwork costume made up of many diamond-shaped pieces of fabric. So you definitely know the costume, even if you don't really know what Commedia dell'arte is. And there's lots of parodies, right? And there's lots of versions of this over like history. So you can't miss it, right? Your eye automatically goes to this person and to this character, right? Their gestures and everything. Even like in all of the pictures I could find, there was always movement involved, right? Whereas like other characters would be more slouched or more like kind of graceful or elegant. The Harlequin is like really active and just like, you know, like extension and all of that. It's a really big part of this archetype. Most Commedia dell'arte improvisation was carefully planned. So somewhat like stand-up comedians, the actors relied on memorized lines. So nothing was truly improvised. It was all based on these archetypes. These gags and preset scenarios were all part of the main event because they all kind of told the story. Now, nearly all the characters and plot devices of Commedia derive directly from the plays of Plautus and Terence, which the Italian troops probably learned while reading and performing Commedia Erudita, which again is the academic comedy for those aristocratic patrons. So, what is the relevance of Commedia dell'arte in today's world? Well, we all grew up watching Commedia dell'arte, or at least versions that were inspired by that, all around us in the slapstick comedies, in improvisation, Saturday Night Live, all of these political satire um, moments throughout history, right? We can go to like the 70s, the 80s, and kind of have a sense of what was going on and the heavy topics that were being hit through those things, through those mechanisms. Commedia dell'arte pushed the envelope. It really got people interested and intrigued, so much so that it was dangerous. I mean, think about it. These actors weren't relying on writers, directors, choreographers, or any sort of like consistent script that they had to be off of. Like, they would roll up into a community and put up their performance and then go on and leave. Like, that is huge. To be able to have that much independence was credited for giving so much craft and giving actors the ability to basically drive a performance. Now, this work was so important that politically it was groundbreaking. People were starting to use these half masks and using them in their own ways to really talk about the different challenges that were happening in society and pointing fingers at the monarchy, so much so that Commedia dell'arte was banned by Napoleon in the late 18th century. I mean, imagine how groundbreaking that is, that you as an actor's troupe would change the culture, right? Would like actually challenge the status quo using something as, I guess, like simple as comedy. Now, this really goes to show how important comedy is in, yes, relieving tension, but also showing truth. If you've ever performed with masks or have seen performances using these types of masks, you know that they can't be changed. They can, I mean, that mask is what it is, right? That one, it already is telling you a story. So your body has to do a lot of work in order for you to move a story forward. I mean, it's said that in some of these performances they didn't even use like words because they were acting so much physically with their bodies. And that's all over like TV and film, right? Over the past like century, all of these mechanisms of like Charlie Chaplin and like the Three Stooges and all of this stuff, it really transports people and it drives a point across without the use of like all of these words. Growing up in a working class family where most of my family spoke Spanish, they watched all of these films and TV shows where there was a lot of physical comedy involved because that was something that crossed language barriers, and you didn't have to understand the language in order to understand the story. And that is huge. That is such an important part of what we do now as actors, how we practice and how we use the body to act. The entire body needs to be present and needs to know what their objective is, right? And that needs to be so clear that even if people in the audience don't speak the same language, they can understand what you're trying to say and what you're trying to do and the flow of the story. Luis Valdez, one of the founders of Teatro Campesino, actually used these archetypes to talk about political shifts happening at the time of its inception, surrounding farm workers and farm workers' unions, struggle and power struggle with the people that owned the farms. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That will be next time on my presentation. Now imagine that you were there, just walking on the streets of Italy, and you saw this troupe. What would you do? Would you stay and watch? Would you sit down or try to just go about your day? And if you could join a troupe, who would you be? Looking at the text that we've been reading already in class, what type of acting would you reference Commedia dell'arte to be? Let me know your thoughts.